Well, I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but the theme of our last week before vacation is spray, 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 spray. As you can see over my shoulder, our pile of chemical boxes just keeps growing and growing and growing, mainly because we keep on getting rains and getting the boxes wet and can't burn them. But before we get started on all the spraying we got to do before we head to the mountains for the week, we got Big Bertha Booty broke down and ready for an appointment with the doctor for some preventative maintenance. Yeah, I had big plans for this picker this year, but with everything else we've had to do on the farm, just finally figured out I'm just not going to have the time to be able to do all the preventative maintenance on this thing that I was hoping. And there's some pretty big jobs on it, that on the baler part back there, that it's going to take a while. Plus we can't do them in our shop because our shop's not big enough to get this thing in the position that it needs to be and do that work. So that would mean a bunch of hot, heavy work out in the hot August sun, and that just didn't seem very appealing to me. But don't have anything wrong with this thing. With just a little bit of work, I think it could be ready to go to the field, but because it's a brand new machine to me, there's a lot of things I want checked out and replaced just to make sure that we don't have any problems with it come fall. But the biggest reason I'm taking it down there is all the rollers in the baler part. Essentially it's a great big hay baler on the back and got a lot of the same parts, just a whole lot bigger. But you got the rollers back there that got bearings in all of them, and this picker is 13 years old now. They've probably never been changed, and from what I hear, that's kind of a big source of, if there's a fire on the machine, it usually comes from one of those bearings going down. So all the bearings and the rollers in the accumulator and the baler part, want to have them replaced. And I mean, you're talking about some massive heavy rollers. You're back there working in an awkward position, then plus being out in the sun on our farm in August, I don't know that's a job we'll ever recover from, not to mention the amount of time it's going to take. Everybody told me you need to go ahead and get the fuse box replaced just to minimize electrical gremlin problems. This picker's got the wide spacers in between the duals, and another problem with these pickers is they're just so big and heavy that like the spacers that's on this machine are earlier spacers. They're not built this heavy, and they can actually break, go down on one side. Then you got to have a bunch of huge heavy jacks to jack it up out in the middle of the field. So it's got wide spacers on there, and we really don't need them, so we're going to have them put some brand new short spacers on there just to reduce the amount of leverage on the outside dual, hopefully keep us from having any of those problems. And they're going to give it a good inspection. Got a really good baler picker mechanic down here in Alamo. I mean, they do a lot of work on pickers, and he's going to give it a good inspection, hopefully see some things that I haven't seen. And then I've got a list of stuff that myself I'm going to do whenever we get it back home in August. I got to go through the heads, gauge all the bars, check all the spindles and everything, and then a few other smaller details that I'll take care of myself. I tell you what, it sure is a treat to be in July, to be sitting in a cotton picker smelling that cotton picker smell. If you've never been around a cotton picker, you don't know what I'm talking about, but if you've picked cotton before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There ain't nothing like the smell of a cotton picker, and it sure is a treat here in July to be able to enjoy it here for a few minutes. And I'm chomping at the bit to spend some days in this thing come this fall. I just hope we got some good cotton to pick with it, because I won't be spitting out module after module out the back. We got to get this thing down here as quickly as we can, because we got to get on some spraying. And I know y'all probably tired of seeing spraying videos. We're not going to be spraying cotton today. We're going to be spraying some corn. All right, now that we got our picker dropped off, and I saw dollar signs bouncing in the service manager's eyes, all the repairs we needed on it. It's time to go tend to some corn. All right, just as soon as we get our water truck empty, we get it loaded right back up again. But what we will be spraying on our corn today is a fungicide. And Tribal Pro is one of the best. I'll also be going on with some foliar fertilizer, some boron, with just a little bit of nitrogen in there. The foliar fertilizer, or boron, is really good about helping the plant translocate nutrients within the plant. And what we found out is that it it doesn't tip back quite as much, because you can translocate nutrients into the ear a lot better and keep a lot of those kernels on the very end. Just helps give us a little bit of a yield bump. All right, well, Andy's getting the load mixed up, because a full tank of water adds about another 8,500 pounds to the sprayer. Our lift kit relies on air pressure to air the airbags all the way up. So we're going to go ahead and activate the lift kit while the sprayer's empty. Go ahead and get the airbags all the way up, and then we'll load up and go to the field. Like she's all the way lifted up. Got our airbags lifted all the way up. No chrome showing on the bottom of the cylinders. Andy's getting me loaded up. We're about ready to go spray. This big old step right here gonna be a problem. First farm. I've sprayed about 10 acres, kind of got my feet back up under me. It's definitely a different experience spraying tassel corn versus other crops. One thing, I have a hard time knowing which rows to be on, because it's hard to judge if I'm over against the border of the field, or if I'm past the border of the field, or a few rows in. And definitely can't run as fast, even with a lift kit, giving us about 71 inches of ground clearance. You know, the corn is still rubbing the bottom of the sprayer. We got our booms all the way up. You know, and tall corn like this, which is probably about as close to as tall as what we're going to have. This is probably 10-foot tall corn if I had to guess. Maybe a little higher. You know, we don't want to beat it too awful bad, so about 8 miles an hour is plenty fast. We're putting out 20 gallons an acre so we can keep our pressure up and coat all those leaves real good. And 8 miles an hour giving us about 40 psi, blowing it down into the canopy with our twin jet tips real good. And I know a lot of y'all are saying, why you bother spraying it with a self-propelled sprayer? I mean, I always see a bunch of airplanes flying around spraying corn this time of year, and that's true. But if you look at our topography, you know, you can see tall trees. You know, we're in about a 6-7 acre field, tall trees surrounding it. I mean, in our area, I mean, airplanes can only do so good of a job. I mean, they're limited by the equipment that they got. You know, they're going like really fast. You know what? Something like 120 miles an hour, whatnot. And I mean, you're going that fast, you dive bomb into the field. I mean, no sooner you make it there, you got to pull back up, and you know, especially around the edges, you just can't get good coverage on your plants. Not the pilot's fault. Ag pilots are some of the best dang pilots in the world. They got a huge sack of balls on them to do what they do. Ain't no way I could do it, you know, but just limited by the equipment. There might be a helicopter or two running around in this area, but they're not real common. Helicopters can do better jobs in our fields. And drones can also do a real good job in our fields. However, the drone market just really hasn't picked up very much yet. You know, I had a little bit of drone work done on my farm on the corn maze last year, and that guy actually wound up selling out. So I don't know of anybody, you know, hiring out to do any kind of drone spraying. So that's the big reason I spent, you know, $30,000 on a lift kit on this sprayer to be able to spray our corn. You know, an ag pilot's only going to put out, you know, what, around 3 gallons of water per acre. You know, 3 gallons of water spread out over 42,560 feet, and that's probably going to cost you, cost me somewhere between 10, probably closer to $12 an acre. You might be able to find a pilot that puts out 5 gallons of water per acre, but you're going to pay more for it too. Whereas, you know, I'm spraying my corn for a whole lot less money, and I'm putting out 20 gallons of water per acre. You know, I'm getting good coverage all the way down to the bottom leaves, which for the fungicide, that's what you want. You want to cover the whole plant, because fungicide doesn't really translocate within the plant at all. So you want to cover that whole plant to protect that whole plant against any kind of disease. And we'll get down here in a minute, and I'll show you what I'm looking at. But I mean, the bottom line is I can do a lot better job with my self-propelled sprayer for a lot cheaper cost than what I could hire an airplane to do it for. And, you know, doing a better job, you know, I'm spending, you know, this fungicide application is costing me $18 an acre. And the chemical cost, you know, I want to get the maximum bang for my buck out of that fungicide, because it ain't cheap to apply by any means. But overall, I'm excited to be able to spray some corn again. We didn't spray any last year because of the, you know, terribly severe drought. You know, our corn was burning up, and a fungicide, you know, we just been pissing money away spraying a fungicide. So, but this year it looks like we could have a heck of a corn crop, and we're gonna try and get every bushel we can, and a fungicide's really gonna help maximize that yield, ensure we don't lose any kind of yield to disease. And look how big this corn is. I mean, like I said, I'm 6'2" tall. You know, it's every bit of 10 feet tall here. And man alive, boys, this is looking good. I mean, look, we got green all the way down here. We're just starting to lose our lower leaves. It's starting to cannibalize itself, you know, taking nitrogen out of this these lower leaves and sending it up to the plant. You know, this is perfectly natural. But, you know, this time last year, we were brown all the way up to right below the ear at this point, and then it just kept on rising. Look, nice green dark leaves. You know, started to see just a little hint of disease. You know, I always prefer to wait until brown silk to apply my fungicide, because normally we don't have to worry about disease very much until later on in the season, and southern rust is the one that we're most concerned about. Anyway, we've been watching the map of where southern rust has been scouted for, and it's still a decent ways away. It's it's made it all the way up to kind of southern Arkansas, but I mean, it's definitely headed our way, and it's by far the most yield limited disease we got. So by applying this fungicide at brown silk, that will give us enough residual to almost make it to black layer and protect this plant until it reaches physiological maturity. But as you can tell, we're not quite at brown silk yet. I decided I'm gonna come out here a little bit earlier than normal. Well, one, because we're leaving for vacation later this week, and we got soybeans we're gonna spray, we got cotton we're gonna spray, so we're gonna go ahead and get this knocked out of the way. But the biggest reason is that over the last week, we received about 3.5 inches of rain over a total of 4 days in the last week. So we're looking at a lot of moisture out here, and we got a perfect habitat for disease to pop up and begin to build. Now the Trivapro that we use, you know, it's 3 different fungicides. Some of them are preventative fungicides, which prevent the plant from getting infected, and some of them are curative fungicides, to cure any kind of disease that's already in the plant. However, when you're dealing with disease, it's always best to prevent the disease from even getting started rather than trying to cure it later on. So I think right about now is about the optimal timing to get the best bang for our buck. Anyway, this is some of our decalb corn. First time I planted decalb in a good long while, and normally decalb is kind of a shorter statured plant, but this is getting on up here as tall as some of my Pioneer. I mean, this is some healthy corn here, so I know you really want to see what the ears look like. So let's shuck a couple ears and see what we're looking at. All right, got just 2 random ears I pulled here. I mean, I'm actually a little disappointed in the ear size. These are 16 rows around, about 37, 38 kernels long. I always thought decalb produced a fatter ear than what Pioneer. That's what I would expect from Pioneer, whereas Pioneer would normally be like 16 around, 43, 44 long. I would expect decalb to be something like 18 to 20 around and 35 or so long. So the length is about right, but the girth is not quite where I'd expect. So I'd expect that real dry weather that we experienced in June probably played a pretty good factor in it. Maybe some cloudy weather in May, whenever we were around V5 or so. I mean, I think we got around a 29,000 population here, and I don't have my calculator handy on me, but at 29,000 population, that kind of ear size, I mean, we're still looking over 200 bushel corn, but we're in a real good spot of the field, and kind of hoping for a little bit better, but it's still going to be some really good corn. Heck of a lot better than what we had last year. But one of the problems is, you can kind of see today, it's kind of cloudy. And the last 2 days, it's been extremely hazy with smoke coming down from the Canadian wildfires, which is going to limit photosynthetic activity on our corn crop. And right now, the corn is setting how deep the kernel is going to be. Obviously you want some big, deep kernels for maximum yield, and kind of cloudy, hazy weather is going to limit that to some. So hopefully it won't last much longer, because this corn needs maximum sunlight right now. And last I checked, nobody's selling sunlight in a jug, so that's what we need Mother Nature for that. We're talking about ear girths. I checked some more decalb. It's 117-day corn a couple days ago, and it had some humongous ears on there. They was averaging, I pulled 2 20 rounds and 1 18 around, and they was 43, 44 kernels long. I mean, well, we get some big yields off of that. Now I kind of want to show you what my lift kit's doing on my sprayer. So here we are underneath the sprayer, and you can tell, it's just bending it over, but that's why we don't want to get too fast, is we don't want to whip those stalks too much and potentially break it off. But we've added belly shields to our bottom side of our sprayer, just so not rubbing on any of that expensive electrical and hydraulic up above there. You can see our poly shields right there. The corn is just kind of gliding down our poly shields right there and protecting all of our airbags and lines and everything. You see the axle's bending over the corn, but back behind it, I mean, it's just popping right back up. No issues whatsoever at all. And I know you can't see it on the camera very well, but you see how shiny that leaf is. That's we're here on the bottom leaf. We're getting fungicide all the way down here in the plant. Another thing that full bore does, it acts as an excellent surfactant, helping that fungicide kind of spread out on the leaf, getting maximum coverage, in addition to giving boron to the plant. But the other thing about that boron is, like I said earlier, it helps translocate nutrients within the plant. And what I believe it helps do is it helps keep the plant from aborting some of these kernels on the very tip end. See, we've already got a little bit of tip back, which you want to see that, because if you got kernels all the way to the very tip, it means you didn't plant your corn thick enough. But you got a little bit of tip back, that means you got the population right for maximum yield in a year. But we don't want to abort any of these other kernels that set, so that boron kind of helps in that regards, helping the plant translocate nutrients from farther down in the plant. up here to the ear to where it is really needed. You know, the amount of fertility that this corn is needing right now, the roots can't even pull it up out of the ground fast enough, even if you got perfect moisture like we do now. So the corn plant's got to start robbing it from other parts of the plant and pulling it up to the ear, which is ultimately where it wants it at. Now, a lot of people spray their fungicide right at tasseling. Like I said, our disease concern is not as great right at tasseling as it is a little bit later on in the reproductive phase, and this Trivapro only gives us about 21 days of residual. So I really would rather protect later on grain field than what I would early on at tasseling, because, like, you know, there's no sense in spraying a fungicide if the disease is not there and is not coming in, because it's really not going to do much for you. But later on in the season, when southern rust gets here that can really severely damage the plant, I definitely want the corn protected then. The other reason I prefer to wait for brown silk is once you get brown silk, pollination's done. You can see all these tassels up here. You can imagine when the sprayer goes through there, it's shaking all those tassels, shaking all that pollen and stuff, and it gets sucked into the radiator. Then you gotta blow your radiator out a lot, usually around at least once per fill up. So, but if you can wait till brown silk, all that pollen is already shed, you don't have to worry about choking up your radiator near as bad. But ultimately, I think we're hitting this at about the perfect time, and this corn should be protected until we get the black layer and maximum yield is set.
Well, all right, well, while Matt is spraying all the corn today, he's got to have somebody on the water truck, so that's what my job is today. All right, Matt's all filled up and I'm headed to the next farm. Actually, first we're gonna go top off the water again. It's not empty yet. We still have about 2,000 gallons in there out of the 3. But before we're going to our next farm in Jackson, we're gonna see if we can't get 3 more loads tonight. So we gotta be full.
Anyway, about this lift kit, if you own a John Deere R series sprayer and you're interested in getting a lift kit for yours to spray corn fungicide, I highly recommend it. It's a very well made kit. It's not the easiest to install. I've got a couple videos from I think 2 years ago where we installed it on this sprayer, but it is doable. It's not cheap. It's around $30,000. It's not a factory John Deere kit. It's an aftermarket kit. I believe the website is SimonInnovations.com, something like that. Anyway, just Google John Deere R4038 lift kit. The owner of the business, real nice, real helpful. Have you any kind of questions installing it? Thing is, with airbags aired all the way up, it does ride pretty stiff, but it's kind of a necessary evil when you need maximum lift. But it does an excellent job. I figured with the amount of acres that we grow and the cost of an airplane, it's going to take me about 5 years worth of spraying to pay for it, just saved in application cost. But that doesn't account for, you know, any kind of extra yield I'm getting from doing a better job. Plus, when you're doing it yourself, you can always make sure that it's sprayed at the absolute perfect time. You're not limited by the schedule of the pilot and how many other acres he's got to spray, and you're able to spray in the right conditions also. All right, we got over here to Ferguson Farm, and Kelly Griggs has been busy this morning. picking our sweet corn. Got a bed full of sweet corn. I get to shuck tonight because she did all the picking. We had a heck of a crop of sweet corn. It goes all the way back there behind the sprayer. We got 12 rows right there. And planted it a long way away from any kind of trees to really help keep the coons out of it. I went down there and picked a few to have some with my lunch today. There ain't nothing better than fresh picked sweet corn. I think she's about to call it a day. She looks roasted. She's been out here working hard. Well, we covered about 250 acres so far, about half of my ground, and what we've been running on is our earliest planted ground, the poorest, usually the poorest ground that I've got. And overall, I gotta say, so far, I'm really pleased. About maybe 85% of my corn looks really fantastic, just like you see out here. And then about 15%, and the vast majority of it is around the end rows. You know, we got some holes, some problem areas, some real thin places. Got some places grass growing up in them. Might have to come back with some Roundup late season, try and knock it back so it doesn't go to seed. But for the vast majority of it, I'm really pleased. About the worst problem we got out here is it's a pretty common disease, and it's called sprayer blight, where when you're trying to train a person who's never sprayed before to spray really small corn and follow the rows and not run over any, and you know, sometimes they have a hard time staying on the road, which can be hard to do really early season, and especially when you don't have any experience running a sprayer, which that was the case with Andy this year, just trying to learn. So that's about the worst problem that I've seen so far overall. You can definitely tell where I've got lower rates of nitrogen, where we've got lower population rates. You know, I was pretty gun shy on corn this year after last year, and I was trying to be really conservative with my planting rates and nitrogen rates, just in case, you know, we had a repeat of last year and cut back. And you can kind of see, especially when I put my drone up in there, you can kind of see some yellow areas of the field and heavier areas of the field, and that's just where we were variable rating the nitrogen. And you know, a month ago when we were getting so dry, hadn't had a rain in a good while, you know, that looked like a pretty dang smart decision. And then after getting some real good rains the last few weeks, it looked like the wrong decision. But you don't know. And as expensive as nitrogen is, expensive as seed is, you know, it's not something you just want to throw out there hoping everything works in your favor. You know, that's the name of the game in crop production, just trying to hit a happy medium. You know, if you swing for the fences every year, that's a good recipe to go broke. However, when you're planting out a crop, I mean, you got to take some risks, or there's not going to be much profit in there for you. Might not lose a lot of money, but you ain't gonna make a lot of money either. So here's a row right here that got run down, where Andy got off the road just a little bit. I mean, hey, it happens. I've run over my fair share of crops so far this year. Well, all day up until now, we've been spraying our decal corn, two different varieties. I believe it's 6595 and 6744. And we finally got to our one Pioneer variety, Pioneer 1464, and I'm noticing a very key difference between the decal and the Pioneer. The decal's got a very upright leaf structure, whereas this Pioneer is not as upright and folded out a little bit more. The leaves look a little bit more floppy, and I'm having a whole lot harder time seeing the ground on this Pioneer corn. And what that boils down to, well, if I can see the ground, also sunlight can see the ground, and if sunlight hits the ground, it means the plant's not intercepting it. Well, the plant needs to intercept sunlight to make its food or whatever. So it looks like, from what I've seen so far, this Pioneer, the way the leaf structure is allowing it to intercept a lot more sunlight and not near as much hitting the ground. And when you're on 38-inch rows like I am, that's could be a very big difference. It might not matter near as much on 30-inch rows where the rows are closer together, but on 38s, that might be a big difference in yield. You know, when I decided to switch a lot of my corn from Pioneer to decal this year, that wasn't something that I really took into consideration. I didn't think about it, but We'll have to see what the combine says this fall, and when it comes time to pick varieties next year, that might have to be a definite consideration when I'm picking my varieties. And also this Pioneer, like always, is going to be a little bit taller than what DeKalb is. And I was always told by a Pioneer agronomist the reason Pioneer breeds their corn a little bit taller is they think that that gives the corn plant a little bit more storage for nutrients when it comes to grain field, especially nitrogen. It's got more stalk to rob nitrogen from to put it towards the corn ear. Now, in my variety test, the top Pioneer varieties and top DeKalb varieties have always been neck and neck in yield, so I don't know if that's in fact scientifically true, but that was always the reasoning behind it from what I heard. I do know the Pioneers definitely has more carbon stored out in the field, potentially put more carbon in the soil, which is one of our goals. But as far as able to store any extra nitrogen, I don't know about that. I do know I'm having to go a little bit slower in this Pioneer corn, so I don't whip the corn around too awful bad. Instead of going anywhere from 8 to 10 miles an hour, about 7.5 is about as fast as I want to get in this corn. All right, we had a dang good day yesterday. If we hadn't had to spend several hours carrying our picker to Alamo, we would have got done with corn. But as it was, we got about 400 out of our 500 acres done. So we're going to try and get this wrapped up this morning just as quickly as we can, because got the report from the Cotton Scout. Surprise, surprise, more cotton needs to be sprayed. About 450 out of our 500 acres needs to be sprayed, so we gotta do all that. And our soybeans are about due for a fungicide too. As long as nothing goes wrong or breaks down, should be very doable to get all this stuff done. But man alive, we had to do a lot of spraying this year. Insect pressure on cotton has been by far, and I mean it's not even close, the worst that I can remember, at least early season. I hope it turns around late season and eases up on us a little bit, because this cotton crop is getting expensive in a hurry. We got to spray it every week for bugs. That raises the cost of cotton crop a whole lot. The good news is our oldest planted cotton, the one that I mentioned last week, we were spraying our third time for plant bugs. We finally got it cleaned up and it doesn't need spraying again, thank goodness. But all these bugs, that's just another curveball Mother Nature's throwing at us this year. We'll get them taken care of after I get this corn done. All right, I done a lot of talking in this video about DeKalb. Well, I gotta give some love to Pioneer too. So anyway, we're over here in our 1464. You can buy some really tall corn. We're down here in one of the better parts of the field. We got a population of 28,000 here and just pulling some ears. Nice looking here. 18 round, 40 long, which for Pioneer, that's high, or at least for this variety of Pioneer. I haven't seen very many 18 rounds in the past, so that's a good sign. Got a 1640 right there. Then got another 1840 right here. I mean, this Pioneer's looking good. I want you to look at the leaf color. I don't know if I've ever seen leaves this dark green before. I mean, this corn is happy. Now this farm right here, we applied Nutritia on, so could that be could that be why the corn is just a little bit darker green than the other corn that I've been spraying? Is it variety? Did we maybe over apply nitrogen here, maybe overlap with spray a little bit? I don't know. I mean, there could be several different things, but just looking out across the whole field, it's this dark green looking from the sprayer. So I'm thinking that Nutritia that we sprayed on here, that nitrogen fixing bacteria, might have something to do with it. Yeah, I mean, look down here in the canopy. I mean, this corn is happy. No signs of firing up. No signs of robbing nutrients from the lower leaves. Looking back away from the sun here, this corn got everything it wants. So overall, after riding most of our corn and doing some walking around in some of it, I don't think it's going to be our best year corn ever. I think our best year corn overall is 192 bushels an acre. And I just think we got too many holes in our fields, especially around the edges, that's going to bring that yield down. But I tell you what, where over the rest of the 85–90% where we don't have issues, we stand a chance of making some fantastic corn. Now if that corn price just go back up to where I can contract some, I'd be really happy. All right, well, we just got our corn wrapped up. I can finally let the air out of the airbags and get some good ride back on this sprayer. So we still got a lot more spraying to do. I'm about to load up with some picks and spot spray one of these, the Smith family farm up here, the one that doesn't look good, but it's definitely got some spots that need picks, and it's not going to need spraying for bugs this week. So just to make sure to keep it in check while we're going on vacation, go ahead and get some picks on some areas of it. Then I got to get back on the hooded sprayer. Got about 90 acres left on it to get done. And then tomorrow morning, Andy and Kelly gonna get started spraying the cotton. Then after they get done spraying the cotton, gonna get my beans sprayed with fungicide, my early beans that is. So anyway, y'all seen plenty of cotton spraying so far this year. You're gonna see some more cotton spraying later on this year, so I don't think I'm gonna cover it. But I got something else back at the office got to do. Y'all might be interested in that, so I'll bring you back whenever I get on that. Well, you know that old wives' tale about if it rains on the first of the month, you're gonna get 15 days of rain. Believe it or not, it comes true more often than not. All right, last thing we got to get done before we get out of town, providing the rain holds off long enough that we can finish up our spraying tomorrow, is had to get all of our wheat income in, get our yields figured, get our landlords that are on share rent, get them billed out for crop expenses, and then also get our landlords paid for wheat. So anyway, after the final figures in, not much changed, but our average wheat yield came in at right at 80 bushels an acre. We produced 33,103 bushels off around 415 acres. Right at there, 80 bushels an acre. A little bit less than what I was hoping for. You know, I was hoping for 80, 85 plus, but yield just wasn't there on some farms. For some farms it was, but what really made up for the little bit lower yield was the price we got for wheat. You know, I had some several really good contracts. Heck, I even sold some wheat for over $10 this year, but our final crop price, average bushel per wheat brought in was $8.37 a bushel. Highest I've ever made by a long shot. So even though landlords might be getting a little bit less payment due to yield, the price definitely made up for it and then some. So made some good money on wheat this year, but like I've always said, you know, wheat, we don't plant wheat for the money. We plant wheat to pay for the expenses for that piece of ground in the year, and then our real profit comes in on the double crop soybeans, as long as we can get good yields on that. And right now we got the stand to make good yields. Just going to need some regular rains throughout August, September, and part of October, and we hopefully we'll have a 40 plus bushel double crop soybean crop. Might even have 50 bushels. I don't know. Just have to wait and see. I know one thing in the past, you know, when I was a lot younger, you know, my hand always seemed to cramp up whenever I was writing out checks to landlords. But now as I've grown older and hopefully wiser, that's actually becoming and actually enjoyable for me. You know, some of these landlords are getting some pretty sizable payments. You know I paid out, I think, about $20,000 to one landlord, and you know, it's writing out that check knowing that, you know, our hard work is helping to provide, you know, their way of life, living expenses. A lot of my landlords are retired and they depend on the income to supplement their retirement and giving them a comfortable life. You know, that's something I don't mind doing anymore. So I already had one landlord come by and handed a check to him, and you know, just seeing the happiness on his face when he saw how many zeros was in front of that decimal point, you know, really makes me feel good about the job we've done around here. But anyway, guys, I'm tired. I'm wore out. More importantly, I'm burnt out. This this spring and summer has definitely put me through the ringer. So I'm ready for weeks of R&R in the mountains. So I'm probably going to light some tires on fire, spinning gravel coming out of my driveway tomorrow about 2 o'clock, provided we get all this cotton sprayed and laid by for the next week. So anyway, guys, appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all come August.